Good evening and welcome to Newsline. I'm Sophie Boyd.
And I'm Dragana Markaya. On today's program, Rolf Harris breaks into song at his trial in London and large sinkholes appearing in Queensland.
Victorian police say tap and go credit cards are contributing to an increase in crime statistics. The number of deceptions, including fraudulent use of credit cards, has gone up by more than 11,000 in the past year. Police Chief Commissioner Ken Lay says the problem is using up an enormous amount of police resources.
And now to federal politics. We'll cross to Yarra Murray Outfield. Yarra, the government has had to defend its decision to redirect funding from one Royal Commission to another.
Yeah, that's right, Dragana. $4 million has been moved out of the Child Sexual Abuse Royal Commission and into the Home Insulation Royal Commission. Departmental documents also show a further $2.7 million has been redirected to the Attorney General's office. The Royal Commission into Institutional Responses to Child Sexual Abuse was set up by the former Labor government last year and has heard from thousands of victims. Attorney General George Brandis says the money comes from legal assistance that was not required and savings in the inquiry's capital budget. Shadow Attorney General Mark Dreyfus has warned the government against compromising the inquiry this late into its investigations.
I think it's very important that the government continue to reassure Australians that that Royal Commission will have the resources necessary to complete its inquiry.
And the news comes only one day after Jeanette Dines stepped down from her role as the Commission's chief executive. Mr Brandis' office has said the Commission will still have sufficient funding to complete the inquiry. Staying with George Brandis, and the Attorney-General has made controversial proposals to repeal sections 18C and 18D of the Racial Discrimination Act, which make it unlawful to insult, offend or humiliate based on race. While Mr Brandis says this will protect free speech in Australia, critics fear these changes will only promote bigotry. Dragana Makaya has the background.
Proposed changes to the Racial Discrimination Act are causing a stir between Australians. Debate comes after Andrew Bolt was found in violation of Section 18C by publishing newspaper articles that questioned the motivations of fair-skinned people who identified as Aboriginal. A Nielsen poll published in Fairfax newspapers found 88% of people do not agree with open bigotry. Public opinion on the streets appears to support this.
I think that people have a right to be bigots in the privacy of their own home, but not in any public place.
However, Attorney General George Brandis feels this type of speech should be granted to all Australians.
I would defend your right to say things that I consider to be bigoted and ignorant. That is what freedom of speech means.
And the Attorney-General has this afternoon been forced to water down proposed changes to the Act. Mr Brandis has faced staunch opposition since he first suggested scrapping sections 18C and D, including from members of the Coalition backbench. The weekend saw thousands of people take to the streets to protest changes to the Act, with many claiming it would impact the vulnerable. It suggested the revised legislation would broaden the definition of intimidate to include verbal bullying and would also amend the wording of a broad exemption from prosecution. That's all for now. Back to you in the studio.
Thanks, Yara. Social Services Minister Kevin Andrews has announced the rollout of the Work for the Dole program. From July, unemployed people under 30 will have to work 25 hours a week to receive Newstart or Youth Allowance payments. The government has announced 18 target areas of high unemployment, including outer Western Sydney, the Goulburn Valley, Geelong and Logan in outer Brisbane.
The issue of immigration has long dominated the Australian political agenda. But for migrants looking for work, the difficulties don't just end when they arrive. Nicholas Payne reports on the reality of this highly politicised process.
The federal government insists that visa places in Australia will only be given to people who come the right way. As Newsline has found, even when you're doing it the right way, there's still a lot that can go wrong. While bridging, working, holiday and 457 visas may be meaningless to many Australians, to migrant workers these are the golden ticket to a better future.
I'm on a working holiday visa.
Elizabeth just wants to study and find genuine work in Australia, but her visa restrictions have made this task extremely difficult.
So I'm working in a lap dance club, so...
Elizabeth has searched desperately for work. With little protection from the Australian government, she's been left to be exploited.
The replies we got back was, you know, if you basically sleep with me, then you can have your rent for free.
Standing behind me is the 8 Hours Monument, erected in 1903 in honour of those Australian workers who proudly fought for their professional rights. Sadly, over a century on, and these same rights are still not available for migrant workers seeking a better life in our country.
As spokesperson for Australia's largest union, Gina Vathulkas admits that stories such as Elizabeth's are all too common.
A lot of these people have come to us for help, and we have met them, and we have assisted many of these people, and from what they tell us, they experience a lot of difficulty.
Long concerned with industrial rights, the CFMEU is well aware of the problems faced by migrant workers.
They're often reluctant to make waves because they know that their employer has a lot of power over them.
Fear, harassment and exploitation. With the recent reopening of loopholes that once restricted the numbers of 457 employees, these issues are only set to grow. Put simply, the working visa system is not working. I'm Nicholas Payne for Newsline.
Now to Matilda Marozzi with the latest in business.
Thanks, Sophie. Consumer confidence has hit its lowest level since the global financial crisis as the coalition's tough budget continues to take its toll. According to the ANZ Roy Morgan survey, consumer confidence has fallen 15% since budget policies first hit the headlines 5 weeks ago. That's the largest sustained drop since the GFC. Despite confidence being at its lowest level since May 2009, ANZ expects consumer spending will improve this year. In other business news, Starbucks will be selling its Australian outlets to convenience store 7-Eleven. Warren Wilmot, Chief Executive of the Withers Groups, which owns 7-Eleven, says he wants to make Starbucks the most successful coffee chain in Australia. It won't be easy. Although Starbucks is the largest coffee chain in the world, the brand has struggled down under. In 2008, the company closed 61 of its 84 Australian stores after losing more than $150 million since 2000. Back to you, Dragana.
Thanks, Matilda. Coming up after the break, Sarah Muskamp reviews the film Healing, news on Rolf Harris and sinkholes in New South Wales.